everyone, welcome to C.A.F.E 229. My name is Joanne Chang. I will be the pianist and the speaker for tonight's talk. The title is Music Without Borders, A Pianist's Journey with Mindfulness. So tonight I will be performing a few pieces along with my understanding from my mindfulness perspectives. The first piece is Clair de Lune, and this is a piece by Debussy, written in the early 20th century, and everybody knows he's a famous French composer and a pianist. And he wrote this music inspired by Paul Verlaine, the French poet. This is his definition and a Western definition of moon and moonlight.
Votre âme est un paysage choisi que vent charmant masque.
Your soul is a chosen landscape, where charming masquerades and the dancers are promenading, playing the lute and dancing, and almost sad beneath their fantastic disguises, while singing in a minor key. Of victorious love and the pleasant life, they seem not to believe in their own happiness, and their song blends with the light of the moon, with the sad and beautiful light of the moon, which sets the birds in the trees dreaming and makes the fountains sob with ecstasy. The slender water streams along the marble statues.
Les grands jets d'eau sveltes parmi les marbres.
So this is a beautiful scenery, but it's kind of a contrasting with the sadness and cover under the mask. So in the East, traditionally, in the Zen tradition, the moon is usually, reflected as an illusion. It's something that intangible. As you can see, the monkey is trying to touch the moon from the reflection in the water, but it's not real. And so that's something we usually in the East symbolizes the moon. And another really famous way that we discuss the moon is how a Zen master would point his finger towards the moon. And the moon is an example of an enlightened self-nature. And it is something pure and of extreme beauty that most people don't get to see. A lot of time when we try to point the moon to where the self-nature is, a lot of people mistaken that finger as the moon. So we need to go beyond it, to go with mindfulness practice, we'll go beyond that the methods and go into the pure beauty of it. So that's actually the way how we interpret moon and moonlight from an Eastern perspective. So there's a quite different contrast there. As someone who lives in New York for many years and travel between Asia and Western world, this is my observations. So now I'm going to perform you with this piece on the piano. Okay, so my next piece is called Gretchen at the Spinning Wheels. It's actually by a composer named Franz Schubert, and it's a lead he wrote for singer and piano set on the poem by Goethe and arranged by Franz Liszt, who was a great pianist and a virtuosist. And so this poem that you can read from my screen is, I'll read a little bit of it. It's my peace is gone, my heart is heavy, I will find it never and nevermore. Where I do not have him, that is the grave, and the whole world is bitter to me. So you can read along. So this is a lady, a young girl's heart who was set on a man who she fell in love with. And this is where she has a love tune for him. But underneath it, she has a lot of anxiety and worry whether he's gonna like her or she's gonna find him again. And she was like weaving with the spinning wheel that, while she is working, she thinks of him. So this is a typical it's a great typical example for someone who practices koan, who is a method of mindfulness. Like we keep having this thought that comes back, and so we will be thinking her service of thought is this. And that's her longing desire for his love. And but underneath, she has a lot of worry. So she worries if she can find him, can meet him again, and can be with him. So that's a Western's music's approach. But for me, as a mindfulness practitioner, that melody seems like our regular thought. But there's, when you meditate, you have a quieted mind. You think there's one thought, but there's actually a lot of noises underneath. It's undercurrents going on. Some has big waves, some has small waves. So you can see that and you can hear that in this piece written by Schubert 200 years ago. So even though as myself as a mindfulness practitioner, I'm coming from the East, this is very close to me, playing Schubert's music. It's very closely related to my practice and how I observe my wandering thoughts and distractive thoughts while I have a mind of doing some tasks. But there's so much going on underneath current. It's almost like a iceberg. The tip of the iceberg is what you see, but there's so much more underneath and so much emotions and turbulences there. So this is a beautiful piece of music. And Schubert made it beautiful, but Franz Liszt made it so much challenging and harder technically. So I'm going to share this piece of music with you. Okay, so my next piece is Dusty Rag, and this is by an American African female composer called May Ofterhide. She wrote this piece in early 20th century. At this time, the African American were minority, and was discriminated against heavily, especially for women. So May was very lucky. Her father was a famous book publisher and very successful. So she got this opportunity. She had all these talents she has, and she wrote a lot of rags, but they weren't accepted and published until her father decided to, publish her works and spread it out. So her pieces and some of her works are still being performed and respected here. So I wanted to play this, and because of her significant gender role in the history of America, jazz music and classical jazz, especially at this time when we hear a lot of African American, Asian people and the female being discriminated against. This is a very special time that I had specifically picked this piece to share with everybody. I think we are all born equal, and that is something. There's racial and this kind of issues, racial issues and gender issues is always there. So something for us to be mindful and to raise our awareness, to be fair and to be equal and to treat everybody with equanimity. All right, so here is the Dusty Rag. Okay, so my next piece is C.A.F.E 1930. I love this name, not only because it's C.A.F.E 229, but also because it's by Astor Piazzolla. Piazzolla was an Argentinian immigrant who moved to New York City at a very young age. And his parents had a lot of little kids. And so he had to start working at a very young age as an immigrant. So he grew up a real New Yorker and as an immigrant. And so he wrote this piece originally for flute and guitar duo. Today I'm doing a piano solo piece, arrangement by him. And I wanted to play this because personally I love at Piazzolla's piece because he has a very unique blend of a different background. he went to study in Europe with Nadia Boulanger, who encouraged him to write the music of his style, not to follow the traditional classical music, not to follow the New York jazz style, but also to blend his Argentinian background. And so Astor Piazzolla loved tango music. So his tango music is not a very common Argentinian tango music. It is a blend of jazz, classical music, tango, and his New Yorker's background. I picked this piece because I think all of us are immigrants. We are moving from one stage to another, one place to another, and one age to another, one stage of life, one situation and condition to another place, to another time, to another location. So I think this is a transient nature. It's a very well talked about in mindfulness and in the Buddhism. And that's something I feel a lot from his music. And the previous pieces I talked about the poem, the music, art, and now it is all different kind of cultural background blended together. I think with mindfulness, we can always explore more internally and more profoundly to explore the parts and the innate talents that we all have that we haven't really had a chance and the opportunity to explore. So I feel very close with Piazzolla's works because of that. So let's listen to his C.A.F.E 1930. The next piece is Pure Land on Earth. This music is from C.A.F.E Foundation. And I'm a commissioner for C.A.F.E Foundation for more than 20 years. During this time, I have traveled around the world to perform, to lecture, to share my love for doing volunteer works with C.A.F.E Foundation and all the volunteers around the globe, from China to Haiti to South Africa to Taiwan and to different parts of US. This music is called Pure Land on Earth. I would like to read the first 2 paragraphs and share my thoughts with you and also some photos with you. Let the trust, honesty, sincerity, and virtue be the earth on which I stand. Let love, compassion, joy, and equanimity be a gentle breeze from the heart. Like in C.A.F.E Foundation, C.A.F.E means compassion in action. And traditionally, mindfulness is consisted of compassion and wisdom. Without compassion, wisdom cannot be applied. So we, this is the first photo is in Gansu province, and we went to check out the water reservoir because there was no water where in the high mountain where they lived. So that was an 8-hour getting 2 buckets of water for each family to do that. So we danced with them and we shared some love and music. And we also have we also met some ethnic groups who dressed up in their beautiful clothing, and we danced and we had live music performed with us. And we also shared Jingsi aphorism with them to, teach them and to work with them, share some wisdom from Master Chen Yan. And some of them are like home visits who live in extreme poverty. And we went there and, understood their lifestyle and shared some of that. And then also some Sichuan earthquake where we went there and travel all the way there to share, people who were lack of homes and food. We spent some time with their kids who lost their parents to be accompanied with them. And the next one, we also went to some home visits to help some really smart kids to have some scholarship and some money to study. And the next, we have also traveled to Haiti when the earthquake hit Port-au-Prince and spent some time to volunteer with them and to help them out. And also to South Africa where we sang and danced with them. People were extremely talented. We had some book drive and we fundraised a lot of different things there. And that was and also Sandy in America where we traveled to Staten Island where it was hit the worst, and walking in the ripples and talking to the people, the residents who got affected. These are all beautiful memories I had, and this is the mindfulness that I have practiced and applied. And also in Taiwan where there was a gas explosion. And next one was also New York performances. I share my performance and piano performances in C.A.F.E Foundation at the Lincoln Center as well as Carnegie Riverside Church. So I get to perform as well as doing volunteer works and the fundraise with youth group members who I led for over 13 years. And they were part of my family, and I traveled with a youth group and with a Happy Campus where I went to a local school with different disability programs. We just share some joy with them. So, different parts of the world, different parts of a mindfulness practices enable me to grow and with C.A.F.E Foundation to have a bigger, larger family than I ever expected. Thank you for listening, and I'm going to perform my last piece, and it will be followed by a Q&A section. Don't disappear.
Wow, that was such a wonderful performance. So I'm Peter. I will be the Q&A host tonight. So I think I was reading what the audience is responding. And I think you got the most claps ever in our Cafe 229 so far. So many people saying wonderful words at the chat room right now. And I think people are saying you're such an inspiration for them. So we're very happy to have you, Dr. Chen, tonight. And as I'm listening to the pieces, those pieces sound so wonderful. So I believe, I think many people probably have the same question as me, which is how did you choose those pieces? How did you come up with the program tonight? I think there must be some kind of meaning behind it. So if you can tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you, Peter, for being the host for the Q&A section. Well, and thank you for everybody to be part of my concert tonight. I wanted to thank you for Tzu Chi Foundation and this opportunity to present my two love, which is music and mindfulness. And I think this is such a great opportunity for me to talk about both and present the two very similar topics to me. Well, it did take quite some thinking to plan today's program. It's not very long, but each of them has its own meanings. First of all, the moonlight, Clair de Lune, is a contrast and the similarities between East and West, where I have both of the backgrounds. And I think, living in New York City, it's such a diverse place, as well as teaching where I teach at CUNY. It's such a diverse cultural backgrounds with my students, with faculty members. I feel it's such a blend. I really can bring it out from different perspectives, even though it was created by a French composer. But I do have my interpretation from mindfulness perspectives about the moon. And the second piece was there's a lot of turbulence under, I talked about underneath turbulence. I feel like that's my mind. When I meditate, you magnify your thoughts, your wandering thoughts and distractions get magnified. And this is she's not alone. I think all of us are. It's sometimes hard for us to concentrate and to focus on things that's very important to us. So the mindfulness practice is a method that brings out what's important to us and what's less important to us, so we can focus on that. And the third piece is, the racial and gender issue that's very current things, especially under the climate of COVID-19, and it is very sensitive to a lot of people. And I think it's such a After Hyde was such a great composer, female African American composer who wrote such beautiful pieces that she is such a symbol that for us to learn from. And so that's something I also want to bring. And the next piece was, I talked about Astor Piazzolla as an immigrant in life. We everybody is. It's life is so transient, and it moves from one place to another, different stages. I think that's it's very close to a lot of us, and that it's inevitable. And I think so. And the last piece is about my mindfulness and practices in different areas of applications. My belief, my practice, put it into practice. So this covers pretty much different parts and perspectives, and also brings the meanings of life for me. And I wanted to share that with my audience here tonight.
Great. I think that's a wonderful explanation. I think usually when people think about mindfulness, they think about sitting meditation and just relax and calm. But I think what mindfulness does for people is to really invite us to investigate deeper into the meaning and purpose of our life and how we want to look at the world differently. So I think your pieces demonstrate or inviting us to use a different perspective to think about issues that we should pay more attention to. So I think that's a wonderful explanation. And I know you work as an educator, and I can see from the audience that some students are writing about, hey, Professor Chen travels around the world. We want to do the same like her. So as an educator, I guess mindfulness training help you to be a good performer. but I assume it does something for your education training or your education for others, right? I mean, would you elaborate a little bit about how mindfulness help you to be a better teacher? Like, what is your teaching philosophy?
Okay, that's a big question, but I think that question evolves as I grow to be an educator. I think as a musician, I share my love of music with my students and with people around me. So I think there's a few things I do. I think being creative. I tell them, don't let them, no, don't let things limit their ability and talents. Explore and be open-minded, have a positive attitude. And also, I try to teach something hands-on because I'm a pianist and they learn music from me. So something creative, something hands-on, and something with open mindfulness and open-mindedness, as well as like a positive attitude and respect my students from their uniqueness. We are good at certain things, not so good at certain things. We have certain talents that others don't have. So you need to really get to know yourself, hopefully through mindfulness, and explore that part of you. What is the unique part that you want to share, and you want to bring it out, and that sells yourself as a independent and a great musician. You have to explore that part. You have to find it out on your own, and that's something I also coach my students with. So that's I think respect, uniqueness, and explorations.
Mhm.
I think that's what I usually is based on when I teach my students and work with them.
Yeah, it's wonderful sometimes to work with young adults, like I also do working with young adults. And sometimes, based on what you say, is you have to sort of encourage them to sort of find out that beauty within them, right? It's almost like each of us are a piece of instrument and they have to play their own music. So as a music professor, I'm sure you have students who probably doesn't know, music much, like never had music 101 before. So how do you encourage them or the audience, because I myself never had like music training, right? How do you encourage the audience to appreciate beauty more in general?
I think, as a music educator through music, I I ask my students a lot, like how much time do you spend on listening to music? How much do you listen to music, and how much do you understand the music? So I work with them on explaining the different elements of music, taking it like a anatomy of a biology course, breaking the music parts down, and so they can understand what's the made of, and how did the composers manipulate and crafts those different parts of the elements and put it all together. And so each of the piece is like their babies. It's such an individual production and creative process that came out. And so I think being creative and being open-minded and
Mhm.
noticing things in their life, and appreciate the nature, appreciate the beauty of in other people, and cultivate a sense of understanding and beauty from little things to big things. And I think that mind of appreciation can be extended to appreciating the beauty that's so subtle and
Mhm.
so intimate to them, and notice those things, be aware of them, and and take that into a part of their life, so they can understand more, explore more, and being sensitive to that kind of, and cultivate it. It is like something you need to nurture. The more you cultivate it, the more sense of beauty you have in different areas of life, then the
Mhm.
more you can appreciate music and cultivate that and let it grow. That's something how I work with them.
Mhm. No, it makes a lot of sense because being mindful means to pay attention, which really means pay attention to the beauty that you have not noticed. So the more we can pay attention, the more we can appreciate. So that is, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. And yeah, some of your audiences, now I'm reading here, like, they love your play of the piece on the moon piece, right? The Debussy's Moon piece. And I guess one question, I guess some of your audience are musicians and they wonder how mindfulness helped their music performance. Now, I think not all our audience know about this, but you're actually one of the earliest mindfulness researcher in the field of music and mindfulness. I mean, you started out the mindfulness and music research like in 2000. So that's like 20 plus years ago, which not many people, people, when they know you as a pianist. They don't think of you as researcher. So maybe you can expand a little bit on how mindfulness help your music performance, and then maybe you can talk a little bit about research as well.
Okay, that's another big question. Let me think. I think I started practicing mindfulness because I was growing into, from graduate school to hoping to become a performer. And that bridge between the students becoming a professional was daunting because and the performance solo on the stage wasn't an easy task. It's never easy. So I found that I need to have a tool to assist me, and just practice wasn't simply enough. So I found mindfulness, which it's free and it's easy. I just need a quiet corner on the cushion. So I found it, and I found it very useful to me, and it just helped me to relax into it and to kind of search more inwardly, and so I can take that into the music understanding as well. It's more like a craftsmanship. I'm trying to understand, trying to gain the insight of and the expression of the music, and trying to do more research into the composer. It's like I'm making a friend with this composer who was hundreds of years ago from another corner of the world. But I'm playing the music. It's so intimate to me, so close to me. So the time and the space and location did never matter. It is a work that I spend a lot of time to craft it, and it's just a very close and intimate to me. And that's something I use my mindfulness to help my music performance. And that leads into my interest in working with my students, because I know a lot of my students are in the performance as well, and they feel the same thing that I do. Performance anxiety, or a little bit of a stage fright, or some confidence process of building, that we all have certain worry and fear being on the stage. So I share that with them because it is very personal to me and has worked for me. So that brought it into my education part. Then as I taught more, I'm like, well, why don't I write to share that part with more educators out there? So I started to read more scientific researches on mindfulness, and there was none really in the music performance when I started up. So I published the first anxiety on mindfulness on the music performance anxiety, and I brought that into education, and I share with the other music teachers and faculty how to use mindfulness in the education setting in 3 different ways: as a mindfulness practitioner, as someone who talked about it, or someone who teach that method directly to the students. So there's different ways that I approach and to work with my students, and then I collect some data in figuring out their music major and their preferences. So that branched out a little bit, but it became my research. So it worked in all different areas of my profession and my life.
Yeah. I mean, that's a I think when people don't know about research, they don't know how much work you need to put in to do the research you were talking about. I mean, running groups and measuring them and following them up every week is a lot of work, which I'm sure that the process and the product is very fruitful for all of us. Now, as I'm reading the questions, some of your students say you are very inspiring for them. But and also someone also asked, like, who inspired you? Who was your biggest inspiration in your music?
You mean the composers? Maybe is that the question?
Well, the exact question is, who was your biggest inspiration in music? So
So that would be the composer or performer then.
I assume so. Yes.
That's a good question. I think every composer became part of me, or I found a part of me in those composers and their works. I think we are all independent. We are all coexisting. We share a lot of life experiences from different corners and time and the world. I think I grew up knowing Beethoven had a really tough life, and I think he was such an inspiration to me. Like he, everybody knew he became started to lose his hearing by his 40s, and he lived up to 57 years old, and he grew up in like a domestic violence abusive father, and having
Mm.
this role model of Mozart in his life, that he was trying to become a star by his parents to be. So and then that just gave him a difficult childhood, and then he had to travel far away to Vienna to become independent, while coming back and traveling to take care of his mother and his siblings. So, and having wrote this piece for Lise, everybody knew that he never gotten to have an ending with the love of his life, and never gotten married, and having losing the hearing cut him off from the social life. And that,
Mm.
I think that it's one of the most traumatic thing that we could ever imagine, to be a musician and losing his hearing
Yeah.
while he performed and composed and premiered his work, his Ninth Symphony, and not know, and he conducted, he not knowing how people stood up, gave him this huge ovation, and he had to be turned around and look at them clapping, and not hearing a sound, or not hearing a note from his premiere of his Ninth Symphony. But he still remained composing and being successful, and left us so many legacies, so much beautiful music. I think that was the most inspiring composer that I would ever knew.
Wow, you pick a very good example. I mean, it sounds like Beethoven has a had a pretty tough life. Jeez, my God. Because this is actually related to another question, which is like another audience asked, what do you think is the biggest barrier or inconvenience as a pianist and musician during COVID? But then listen to your Beethoven story. I'm not sure we had it as tough as Beethoven, but what do you think? What's the biggest challenge for you as a musician during COVID?
As a performer, and all the music market is gone, all the concert halls were closed, are still closed. I think I worry about musician and performing arts future. I mean, where are they gonna, I'm an educator, I'm fortunate to still be able to teach online, but what about those performers? I worry for them. I wanted to perform, but there's no audience there. There's no location available out there. I fear about the future of that for all of us.
Mhm.
And as an educator, it is so hard to teach performance ensemble and something like that's hands-on and live, so so interactive on the internet through Zoom or through Blackboard.
Mhm.
That is a challenge. You have to bring that, as much music through that internet to your students. I think that's such a barrier. It's such a task for all of us. So those are the two things that I found extremely challenging. And I hope this will be over, and our musician and performing artists will be back to their work and job, and it will bloom again.
Yeah, I think as a music teacher, I'm sure you worry for your students' future. This is the one of the toughest time for your students, so I can understand this very well. I think we all do worry for our students, but I think as music students, they are having a much tougher time, it seems
It
like.
is. It is.
Yeah. And I think as a volunteer, I'm sure you get to have many chances helping people dealing with a tough time. And one of our audience is interested in your disaster relief um, experiences. I think what makes the G Foundation special is not only we practice mindfulness, but mindfulness in action. So can you share a story with us about your disaster experience?
Um, hmm. Uh, I have experience and were told so many stories, and each of them has it's a uniqueness and background to it. I guess when I was starting to do volunteer work, I think that the one of the most impressive story that I heard was traveling to Gansu, where like you guys saw the picture that there's no tree on top of the mountain, and the rainfall was like almost zero during the year, so the kids had no money to be sent to school. So the kids were assigned a job a day, which is carrying 2 buckets of water, empty buckets, to walk all the way down to the valley of the mountain to get 2 buckets of water and carry it all the way back up to their home. That, 4 hours per trip, and that's 8 hours of life spent there. And they, when I heard, and then so we went there to build reservoirs so they can store up some water within their yard. So when I heard that, and the kids weren't allowed to go to school, and their job was to carry the 2 buckets of water to serve the family for some water and some cooking. I and they left their home after they became adult. After 18, they left to find a job in outside, and they weren't able to count the money they earn, and weren't able to communicate through the language with other people. I just thought of the education I have received and all my students have received in the States. It's such a luxury. I mean, you don't know until you don't have it. I think that's something really made me aware of the importance of education, how the kids will, can appreciate little things in their life and grow to be a wonderful human being through stories like this, through sharings like this, and through education to transform them. And that's something I would share.
Well, I mean, it's hard for people to imagine if they've never been there. I mean, you actually here, well, we take everything for granted. We turn on the faucet, water comes out, go to
Mhm.
school. We hate to go to school, but then kids in another part of the world don't even have any idea what school is. So I think, I guess that is one of the strength of doing mindfulness in action is it allow you to see what people's what what people are missing out there, which sort of help you to build more gratitude and respect for what others have to go through and what you have. I think our time is almost up, so this is going to be my last question for you. As a mindfulness researcher, as a mindfulness performer, as a mindfulness practitioner, what would you hope our audience to gain tonight before they leave?
That's a good question. I think mindfulness. I mentioned that in my previous earlier time. Mindfulness is has two wings: compassion and wisdom. I think compassion is love and big hearts. Apply that to people near you, and wisdom use apply in the right place to the right people, to the needed. I think having that is mindfulness, and that is something. And we can use music as a vehicle to pass our love. Use music to pass your love. Use music to entertain. Use music to bring joys to people around you, and treat them well. Then it will circulate. It will come back to you. So, make people around you happy, and they will make you happy. Mindfulness practice in applications. I think that's something. Use your music, use your talent, use your kind heart. I think that's something I would offer at the end of my lecture concert today.
That's a wonderful answer. Use our talents, such as our music, to make ourselves a little bit wiser and bring joy and love to others. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. And thank you for Tzu Chi Foundation to give me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. So thanks again. We thank you all for staying with our concert. In April, we have a very interesting webinar coming up. Our next speaker is Zarko, and he's a great martial art teacher who is also a Zen practitioner. His topic will be on the art of conflict. So if you love martial arts, if you want to know how martial art can be used to practice mindfulness, please stay tuned. It will be on the third Friday of April and start at 7 p.m. Thank you. Thank you for coming.